to do something new for this video that I haven't done in any others. I wanted to cover some of the drawing process for portraits with a narrated description of how I go through drawing a portrait. So to start out with the portrait, I also wanted to cover the sketch outline. This is not something that I usually show in the videos. I do have a couple where I go through that process, but I don't usually do it because when I'm sketching, I like to put my head right over the piece of paper. I don't know if that's because I'm nearsighted and that's what my preference is, or I'm not really sure, but it makes it kind of hard to capture on video when you're just looking at the top of my head. So I'm gonna try my hardest not to put my head centered over the drawing this time, but we'll see how that goes. Basically what I'm doing here is measuring some major feature distances so that I don't mess up the proportion. So far I think I'm doing a good job of keeping my head out of the way, but as I said, it's very tempting for me to put my head right here, so hopefully I don't have to edit out too much of this drawing in the end, because I couldn't help myself, you know. And we've got a lot of the basics down, so just kind of get basic shapes, get your shapes down. A lot of times I like to start with the nose, but you know, again, it's kind of up to you what you like to do. Don't worry too much about it. Like I said, you're just trying to get the basics here. You want it to look like an eye, roughly. And sometimes you do mess up, though. That eye clearly was not the way that I would like it. Yeah, it's better. It's a little better. But again, I should take my own advice here and not worry too much about it. I'm going to measure this again because I'm not feeling too confident with that distance. And as I said, that's okay if it's not exactly where you wanted it, or you need to make some edits or some adjustments. That's okay. And I'm probably doing these pencil lines a little too dark, maybe, because we're really going to go for detail later. And that's, like I said, that's probably too dark, because we don't want to get too crazy with these lines, because we don't want to interfere with the lines that we make later, or we don't want to interfere with the color that we add later. So I think I'm roughly on track with my marks. Oops. And just for, I mean, it's kind of up to the artist how some people are good at still life and drawing live subjects. I'm not. That's very difficult for me. I'm not there as an artist. But for those that are good at it, that's perfect. They can have have someone pose for a drawing. For me though, I like to look at an image, usually on my computer or on my iPad is easiest for me, because it's a good size and I can get it close to where I'm drawing, which is ideal. Now, in some portions of the outline, I like to get a little notation of where the heaviest shadows are. I don't know if more accomplished or professional artists would do it that way. I don't know if that's best case or like if that's best practice or not, but for me it helps when I come back later to be able to see where that deep shadow should be or where some of those lines should be. I don't know if that's the way like professionals would do it. They might find that to be a little too interfere too much in the finished product, because I mentioned trying to keep the lines not too sharp. Try not to draw too darkly. So drawing the lines too darkly, you might end up with graphite that shows too prominently in the end result or something like that, and that's not what you want. Ideally you want the colored pencil to be what really comes through. I kind of mentioned this earlier, but if the outline sketch doesn't look exactly the way you wanted it to, that really is okay. That's not a huge deal. So the next thing, after you've got whatever kind of rough outline you're comfortable with, the next thing is, at least in the way that I do this, is to start adding some color. And for me, that means a base layer of light peach, which I guess I should mention, the pencils that I usually use, or I guess always use, are Prismacolor Premiers. I don't know if the camera will be able to pick this up or not, but there's some text there. Premiers. These are kind of moderately priced pencils that I guess they're a step above like quote unquote cheap pencils, but they're also not prohibitively expensive like some professional level pencils are. One of the biggest things for pencils is how smooth the color laydown is. Kind of how, because these cores they're not lead like a graphite pencil. So this is pencil lead. These cores are made of like a waxy, I guess it's wax. It's a different type of substance. So, and then it's they add pigment to it. I guess Prismacolor's website has kind of a description of how, like what the pencils are made of and all that. But the smoother the color laydown, I think, the more expensive the pencil is. So, and that just means that they're easier to blend. So now that I've got a base layer of light peach, and by the way, I tend to do this with a pretty wide variety of skin tones. This base layer of light peach, and then I kind of get different additional layers based on skin tone. So someone who's paler, I might go towards blush pink, or maybe some sort of lighter beige or something, or we can go brown and start layering some browns in there, like this umber, or usually not French gray is kind of a brownish gray. I don't usually use that for skin, I usually use that for hair. But we can go with a dark umber, or light umber, or I have a sienna floating around here somewhere that I use as well, burnt ochre. So you can add a lot of additional layers as you need. In this case, I'm gonna add some blush pink, but I'm also going to get into some shadows, and I'm still trying to stay conscious of keeping my head out of the way. I think I'm doing a good job. We'll see when I edit the video if my big head got in the way. But let's see. Okay, so this is now where, in my opinion, we start to get to some of the more important detailing. So I'm gonna start adding some shadows to this. And hopefully, if I do this right, some of the character of this will come out. And you'll start to see, I hope, why I was saying that the outline is less important, because we will start to see the outline sort of vanish. It's going to start to disappear on us. We'll still see some graphite, but it won't be as pronounced anymore. The color will take over to some extent. So I really like doing portraits that have a lot of heavy contrast. And the reason why I like that so much is that I'm not that good at it. I've mentioned in some blog posts and some other spaces that I'm not a professional artist. I'm obviously, you can probably tell by the way I talk about art, that I am very much an amateur. So a lot of this is self-taught kind of, just hobbyist level type stuff. Very much learn by doing. But to me, these high contrast portraits are a great opportunity to practice a weakness, because especially when I started out using colored pencils, which was not that long ago, I think it was probably 3 years ago, I was very much nervous about taking risks, and I've made a point of trying to get better at the things that I'm when it comes to drawing, just at some of these things that are harder for me, like these high contrast subjects, and I think I've gotten a little better, but practice makes perfect. So you can see that as we're adding this contrast, the pencil marks, they're starting to become less relevant. they're still there so far, but we're going to see them disappear more and more as we add this contrast. And we'll see more and more how that outline just sort of helped us get where we need to be, but it was not the end-all be-all. It was really just kind of a track to keep our drawing car going, but it was not everything. So you can see that in addition to the shadows, I'm trying to kind of bring out some of the kind of pinkness here. And I do not have a great sense of color, so I always wonder if I'm doing these colors right. Because to me, the pink and lips is pretty similar, and we'll add some additional highlights of maybe some henna or some other types of pink to the lips here, but I feel like there's a lot of similarity there. So again, I'll throw this asterisk out here. You know, this is all coming from an amateur who is untrained in the ways of art, so this may not represent the best way to do things. Okay, so we've got some, well, let's add a little bit more here. So just to go over some of the colors we've been using, we did start out with this base layer of light peach, Prismacolor Premier's blush pink, 50% warm gray, 70% warm gray. Oops, I got another 50 out. So these are, I use these grays for shadow. Warm gray is I like to use in a lot of cases. I also have some cool gray colors, which seem to be a little, I don't know if blue is the right word, because you can't really see blue, but they're a slightly different tone. But I tend to use the warm grays when I'm adding shadow to faces. Okay, so we've got some contrast here, which is what we were looking for. Now we're going to do something that may seem a little counterintuitive. We are going to wipe out a lot of our contrast by blending. This is going to make the skin seem, I think, a little more natural looking, but it's also, boy, that's a small pencil. I wonder if I have a bigger one somewhere. Okay, here's his big brother. So we're gonna blend these colors together, and it's gonna make the skin seem a little more smooth, but we're also gonna lose some of our contrast, which is okay. We can get all of it back through more layers. This colored pencil process, the way I do it, is all about layers. And I think that's true for other colored pencil artists too. I watch a lot of videos of other people. I'll link some of my favorites in the description because I don't want to mispronounce their names or anything. But you know, I'm a big fan of seeing how other people do things and seeing if I can learn something from them in that way. I guess that's my best way of replicating studying actual professionals, is just kind of seeing how they do things. But there are a few artists on YouTube or on different, I guess, Instagram too, on WordPress blogs that are pretty good about showing how they do things and what their art process is. It's good to learn from them, see how they do it. So this blending, all I'm doing is I'm pressing really hard And I think that's one of the big things. So you can either approach this by layering over and over and over and over and just putting a ton of layers in and doing it somewhat lightly. That I think is the probably more professional route. And I've seen other artists do it that way. I think it can be time consuming though to do it. You have to keep going and going and going. And I think when you see YouTube videos of ultra realistic pencil drawings, I think they get there by layering, well, let me show you. So like just a really light, and then a really light, and then a really light, and then really light again with a different one, really light again, and they just keep going and going and going, and they'll blend it with a white like I did, but lightly, and then they'll keep going. So it's a time-consuming process from what I've seen, but you know, the upside is that if you do it right and you have a good eye for color, you can get to an absolutely beautiful, realistic drawing. I have neither the talent or the patience to get there. You know, maybe that's something I should work on too, is my patience. That's probably what makes those great artists great, is their, you know, sheer talent, but also their tenacity when they're drawing. So, you know, another thing I can work on. But for me, I take a path of somewhat less resistance, which is, instead of the dozens of layers, I'll have 3 or 4 layers, or maybe even 2 layers, and I just tear into it with this white. I push really hard with the pencil, just to try to get as much pressure into it as I can, and really blend it up. I'm layering a lot of wax from this pencil here. There's a risk to this approach though, which I should definitely mention. So your paper has a limited tooth, which is the small little bumps and rough spots in the paper. The tooth is what picks up the wax from the pencil. So if you run out of tooth, your paper can no longer pick up any of the wax. That is when you are definitely done with your drawing. You can't do any more because the paper won't pick anything up anymore. It's fully saturated. And that can happen faster than you think sometimes. So that's why this very heavy blending that I'm doing is risky, because you can end up with no ability to add any additional color. So you just kind of have to be, in a way, it's a, I don't want to be too dramatic, but it's like a race against time, to a race against wax, in other words, to try to get your detail in before you lose the ability to add more color. So here I'm just trying to get some additional detail into the lips here. I'm using a little gray and a little, you know, beige sienna. I just tried that. I really didn't like it. I don't think that was what I wanted. I was adding henna, but that still doesn't seem like what I want. It's kind of reddish, and that's okay, but I'm looking for something a little more muted, but maybe I can get there by getting back to the white here. So I will probably, at the end of this, I know it's counterintuitive because I was just talking about how we're making the outline disappear by adding all this color, but I usually do at the end come back with the graphite and do some detailing, just because it helps bring out sometimes there are pieces that I didn't really want to lose, and I ended up losing anyways. So sometimes I'll come back and try to bring those back out. Another thing that I'm trying not to do for this video, but I probably won't be able to avoid, is sometimes I jump around. Like I just started on the hair and I decided I didn't want to do the hair right now. I want to come back to the eyes. So I'll do that. I'll jump to the eyes here. And this again is one, just like the outline, I'm most comfortable with my head like literally half a foot from the page. So it's impossible to video with your head half a foot from the page. So I have to fight that instinct with the outline where we started, but I also have to fight it for the eyes because I want to do that when I'm working on the eye detail as well. So I will try to keep my head out of frame. It'll be difficult, but I think I can do it. I am just going to add some minor details. So I can't help but feel like with eyes that there is a better way to do it than the way that I do it here. I am just taking the graphite, trying to fill in the pupil while maintaining some reflection and while trying not to make it seem like the person has googly eyes, which is another weakness of mine. I am not always great at pupil placement. It's something I've tried to work on, but it requires a very precise hand that I'm not sure that I have just yet. Maybe practice will get me there, like with the rest of this. So we got the pupil somewhat in. I'll come back with a very, very dark gray, or maybe even a black, we'll see. Try to add some, actually, I very rarely use black. I do have a black, but I'm probably not going to use it here. I'm going to use 90% warm gray, which is almost black. I don't know why I don't use black very often, but it's just a weird thing. So I'm just coming in here and going back over the pupil. Again, hoping that I do not make the pupil placement look weird. This is one of the few instances where I will not, I won't blend that pupil. I want it to stay dark like that. So I'm not going to come back with the white in the very center. I may come back with the white in the colored part of the eye. It just depends how it looks. In fact, yeah, I think I probably will come in there. Let's see here. One thing to be careful of when you're blending, I don't know if you can see on this white pencil, I have some leftover color from blending. If you're going into some bright colors like red or blue, you want to make sure you don't have any leftover color on the wax. Otherwise, you see what happens there. I don't know if that showed in the video, but there's color left there. If you're not careful and if you don't want it, we don't want that color in the blue. So it's good to sharpen it. It gets some of that excess off. And this is another situation, I just almost leaned my head right into that picture. I really wanted to, but I fought it, so I didn't. But I'm just adding some additional, there's some, I don't know what that part of the eye is called in there, the little sort of pinkish, but here we also want some a little shadow too. We don't want it to be just pink. So we'll do that. So the face is really coming together. Kind of what this portrait will become is starting to come out. So we're going to get into the eyebrows and the hair now. So with most people, I guess, yeah, probably most people have some kind of brownish hair, whether it's kind of a dark brown or a blackish brown or a reddish brown or blondish brown. I mean, there's probably some brown that we will use in most people's hair. And some of my favorites to get that sort of muted brown are these French grays. Right, so with this French gray, I'm going to start by focusing on some of the darker areas. So hopefully this ends up being kind of a dark shadowy portion that has more brown to it. It should. More brown than the skin tone here, this pinkish skin tone. But, you know, this all just depends. It's all situational. For this subject, this may work, but this is kind of a process of experimenting and just seeing what you like and what you don't like. I was actually missing something from this video that I almost always have on the desk here with me that I forgot to talk about. This little mark page. My kids call this a mark heart page, and so that's what we usually call it around here. I guess because they kind of look like hearts the way that I scribble them. But I do this to test colors. I don't always blend them on this page, but sometimes if I really need to see what a color is going to look like together with another color, I'll kind of add them together. You know, get some of these browns together and see what they look like, and then blend it. So it's good to have a little test sheet next to you so that you don't end up testing it within your drawing. Not that it's a bad thing to have little marks around here. Maybe that's part of your style if you want, but I find having a little test page handy is pretty useful. Okay, so I'm going to go into her eyebrows here. This is another area that is sometimes a pitfall for me because I want it to be dark, but I don't want it to be too unwieldy looking, because that is a pitfall that I've fallen into before, where I add too much color and then I blend it up to make it a little less severe looking, and I end up with kind of a mess where the eyebrow area is bigger than I wanted it to be. So I'm adding a little graphite to this to give it some, I don't know, maybe some lines that maybe won't disappear. We'll see. But I do need to blend it because you can see that it looks very sharp next to the rest of the drawing. So, you know, your eyebrows aren't like a marker drawn across your head. They're they're hair that it should look like hair, hopefully. So that's blending okay. That's not bad. This one is actually okay. You never know. You never know. So that's not bad. That could have been worse. We'll need to work on it a little bit more, but because we're going to come back and do another shadow pass here in a few minutes. For right now, though, I'm gonna come back to the hair, and so I do want to talk about hair a little bit since we're on that right now. This is another area that I need some practice on. I need to work on my technique some. You know, one of the other artists that I've watched videos for. Again, I don't want to say the name in the video because I don't want to mispronounce anything or say the name wrong. I'll try to link it, but this is an artist that's pretty prevalent on YouTube, and she's got some great tutorial videos. Like one is on how to do realistic hair, and I watched it and it was amazing, and I thought, how can I replicate that? I guess I need to practice more. One of the things that she said in the video was not to try to tackle all the hair at once. Like, my natural instinct is to try to do strands all the way down, all the way like this, but she said that it was better to take it into like where the colors are isolated together. Like, where's there a dark spot? There's a dark spot here. Try to tackle that hair together. Still trying to make it like strands, but capture a dark spot, and capture a lighter spot, and capture a color variation. Like here we want a little, there's some different, I mean, I guess it's true for a lot of people's hair, is there's, as the light reflects it, there's different tints that pop up. You know, there's different spots, different kind of explosions of color that you want to try to capture in the drawing. So that's something that I'm trying to work on, is getting those isolated areas of color right. And I've gotten better than I used to be, but I can still tell there's still work to be done there. So, like with all of this, it does look rough at first as you're adding color, but it gets better once you start blending. At least I think it gets better. I always hope it gets better. But that's a pretty common issue, is I find a lot with drawings that I try not to get too frustrated early on if it's, you know, like if it's a drawing of my kids or something that I want to get right. You know, family, those are always important. If it's going to be something that's going to be a gift, you know, you want it to look nice. So it's easy sometimes to worry, and sometimes over worry about those drawings. You want to make sure that they're right. But even if it's rough at first, my point is that it's probably going to be okay. Once you work on it, once you kind of tighten up the rough patches a little bit, usually these turn out okay. At least not terrible, where you want to throw them away or anything like that. All right, so we've got enough color here now that I'm gonna start to blend this. I'm gonna blend this hair, and I've left some spots blank where I think light is probably reflecting a bit, but I'm gonna start to blend, and we'll come back to the hair and add some more details later, because we'll need to, because again, when you're using the white to blend, you lose some of the sharpness and some of the contrast. So we'll blend this, get the colors mixed together, and then we'll come back and add some more sharp detail. And as I mentioned before, I'm pressing very hard on this. I'm actually making the table shake, I'm pressing so hard. Hopefully that's not messing the video up, but you really want to get after this wax force this ochre to mix with the French gray and the light. Did we add any light umber? I can't even remember if we added any. I did mean to, but maybe I got too distracted talking. I don't usually talk when I do these, so in fact I have to give a big thumbs up to my kids because they like to draw with me. It's actually one of my favorite things about drawing is that my kids draw with me most of the time. In fact, you can see them in a lot of the videos that I've posted to the YouTube channel. They're sometimes off to the sides here, or talking, and we're drawing something together. They're doing me a solid here, and they're in kind of silent mode right now, which I appreciate. We'll have to do another drawing session where we're as loud as we want to be. So I'm coming back here, and what I mentioned about the tooth of the paper, I am actually already starting to lose tooth with the hair here. I must have been pressing really hard on this white because I'm losing the ability. You see how this is a 90% French gray, so it should be very dark. So I'll just show you right here. It's a very dark color. I'm already losing tooth, and I'm not able to get this as dark as I want to. So, drawback of the way that I do this, again, is it's easy to lose tooth. So, let's see now. So, let's go back to, we're going to take a 70% warm gray, and we're going to go back to the face here and try to add a little depth. So again, the outline that we had here, that graphite outline, it's pretty much gone, I think. Okay, so I took a little break for a minute to see if I could find some additional colors for getting the lips a little more as I'd like to see them, because I really wasn't feeling the pink that I used. And that is something that can definitely happen. Sometimes you're not going to pick one that works exactly the way you wanted. And that's okay, that's not a huge deal, but I went with a blush pink, and it ended up being maybe a little too light for what I wanted. I mentioned before, sometimes you do have to go back in. It's usually, for me, not until the end or closer to the end, but here I lost some detail that I kind of want to see this far into the drawing, but appears to have vanished. So I want to come back in and add some of that. Sometimes you get into a cycle of coming back, adding detail, realizing maybe you went a little too far in adding kind of depth and darkness, and then you wash some of it out with the white again, and then you realize it was too much, and so back and forth. That's okay, that happens. Like here, I see myself doing this over and over again on the nose. And that's obviously too much. I probably shouldn't have used 90% there. So now we're going to come back. And we're going to wash some of that out. Just like that. But we need to come back. Add something here. And we want a little something here too. And I think I'm realizing on this one that maybe I did not. I thought I did okay with it at first, but I think maybe I did not do very well with the eye placement. Which is okay, it's not a huge deal, but I'm just not sure about it now that I'm kind of getting into some of this additional shading. I'm not sure if it's exactly where I wanted it to be, but that's okay. So another thing about this blending, and I'm doing a not perfect job, but an okay job with on this one, is you do want the directionality of your blending to make sense, to be logical with the way the shadows are and the way the features are. So just as an example, when you're blending around the eye, you kind of want the direction to be like this. With, I guess the way you would phrase it is with the musculature and with sort of the bone shape and all that kind of stuff. You want the directions to make sense. So around the eye socket here, around, like this, circle here, like this. So the direction does matter, and it impacts how the final drawing looks, and how natural it looks, I think, too. You know, kind of done a mixed job here on this one. I'm not sure if it's ideal in those terms, but it probably isn't. But you know, you win some, you lose some, I guess. Just some more, trying to add some more depth of shadow here. But like I mentioned with the hair, we're starting to bump up against the limits of the amount of tooth that's left in this paper, which again is a function of this sort of heavy blending technique. Is, you know, you can run out, and then you're kind of, the drawing is what it is at that point. Oh, that was not what I meant to do. At that point, you're kind of out of options. If you're not where you wanted to be yet, then kind of SOL. But we are not out of tooth yet, so we'll see where this ends up. Adding shadow and losing shadow as I blend, just continuing the battle. I think I need a darker one. 90, 90, 70. I'm trying to cast my cast my eye over the whole drawing now, I get a little laser focused on specific aspects of it at times. I think that's natural, probably, is to focus on something. Like you're working on the nose, so you focus on the nose. You're working on the eye, so you focus on the eye. But there has to come a point where you're trying to gauge the whole thing. You're trying to look at this whole thing, and is the picture making sense at this point? Are the broad stretches of shadow actually fitting? Like this blotch here and this blotch here, do they make sense? Sometimes the answer to that question is, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know if it makes sense. But in this case, I think it's starting to. I think it's starting to make sense. The face is coming together in a way that I don't think that it was even a few minutes ago. So that's good, that's encouraging. But it's all in the eye of the beholder, so I think it might be coming together, but you never know. Not everyone may agree with me. Maybe some people are looking at this and saying, I'm not so sure about that. A little darker there. So I don't want to get into like, this is just a full list of things that I need to work on, but you know, I think it's okay to be a little critical of yourself sometimes, and I know there are things that I need to work on, and patience, I mentioned, is a huge one. Not rushing into this heavy blending so quickly. Maybe if I allowed myself a couple of extra layers, or, you know, honestly, even if I used to use, so at the beginning I was using the ruler to mark down some distances to help myself with proportion, which can be hard. I used to do grids though. Like I would measure, you know, however many centimeters or sometimes inches, just depends on my mood, I guess. But I would mark out a whole grid very lightly, but that grid would kind of help me make sure I was getting the proportion correct. So, you know, I guess everyone has an opinion, but there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to lay down a grid to make sure that outline looks right to you, you know, whatever helps get that done. In this case, I find that just measuring the distances is pretty effective, I think, because as I've mentioned many times already, so much of this comes from the colored pencil part, not the graphite part. You know, the graphite only goes so far, and the rest of it comes from that pencil. So another step that we can try. Sometimes I like to take an eraser. Like you can either use one of these brick ones or the one on the end of the pencil. If I end up where I have kind of a mush, where there's the brightest spots have washed out to some extent, sometimes it can be useful to come in here with your pencil and just see if you can't pull a little bit of that color pencil off, like this. And we're gonna we're gonna do something else to this as well, and I'll show you that. But just light's gonna hit the nose here. Let's pull some color off, and then light's gonna hit here too. Maybe we went a little too far with the peach, or the light peach. And there's a little gray there too. Maybe I went a little overboard. So let's pull some of that off. Where else could there be some light? There could be some light here. Okay, on the side. And, you know, here too. Why not here? Yeah, I think so. And here, also here. Any on the lip? Probably, maybe, something like that. So pull some color off there. This is usually an end of drawing thing to do, but, and I'm not done yet, but we'll go ahead and pull some of this off anyways. This is a similar thing though. So I'm pulling some off the hair too, because I want some light here. I also want some light here. And sure, maybe some here. So similar to blending with the white, where you can get some leftover color here. You can also get some color on the end of your eraser. So looks like I'm okay there, but you want to be careful that you didn't try to erase like some bright red or something and end up with some leftover color there. That would be not ideal. But that reminds me, we've got some leftover color here. I want to make sure that that's gone, because I just want all white, and I want to go back over the erased portion with the white. Make sure that it is emphasized like I want it to be. Okay, like this. Because I've pulled some of that wax off with the pencil, and there's only so much of that you can do. You can't go overboard with that technique. It just won't. The wax is such that it wants to stick to this paper. So you, like with an eraser, some of these dark spots that I have here, I would not be able to, you can't take them off. And that's probably by design. I would guess that that's a positive quality in the durability of the art that you create with these pencils. You know, the marks will last on the paper, and that's a good thing. But you can pull a little bit of it off, and you can use that to, excuse me, I'm making a little blowing noise. I'm just trying to get some of the little dust off of there. But you can pull some of that off and to a little bit of an effect, not too much, but here, there we go. Okay, yeah, that kind of does what I was hoping. Okay. How's that looking? I feel like we need a little more. I could be wrong here. I could be just my poor color perception, but I feel like we need a little more of this here. And maybe here. Maybe. Maybe not. a little more dark here too. And I do feel we are losing tooth here now to a real degree, which I know we already started in the hair a little bit to lose, but we are losing some here now too. There might be a point here where I'm overdoing it. I'm not sure. I don't remember who said it, but I do know some artist said that one of the hardest things to know is when you're done. When are you done with your drawing or your painting or whatever it is? And I don't know the answer to that. That's a hard one, because I think sometimes I'm done when I'm just tired of working on it, when I've come to the point where I want to draw something else. I don't know that that's a good answer. I don't think that a professional artist would answer that necessarily, but you know, when I'm tired of that particular subject, or I think maybe I've kind of done all I can, or the paper's just not picking up the wax anymore, or whatever. Oops, well, that's unfortunate. Kind of messed that up a little bit. Yeah, so I don't know if there's a good answer for when do you finish, or at least I don't know that I have a good answer for that. This is getting close though. Now, one of the things I've mentioned, again, I keep mentioning all the stuff that I struggle with, but I do struggle with eyelashes. They're hard to get right. What I usually do is I use my old graphite pencil, and I think I don't know that I need to do too much here, but kind of go in and get the suggestion, light suggestion of eyelashes. I think I'm okay with this one. Come back in here. So we're gonna try, I'm gonna add some more color to the hair if I can, but we're gonna try a technique that I have not really figured out yet, but again, I learned from watching other artists. Probably what I guess they're professional artists. I don't know what the distinction is. I guess it would just be that you get paid for your artwork. Maybe that makes you a professional, but I'll call them professionals because I think they're very skilled. But a professional artist video I saw used one of these, an X-Acto knife on the hair. I'm going to try to do that here, and I'll tell you what I saw that artist do and what the purpose of it is. I have not been able to figure that out exactly, or to master it. I guess not even close to master it. I haven't even really been able to figure it out. But they say you can, it's part of that whole make more natural looking hair tutorial, and the way she does it, it looks really good. But okay, so I am typically a very boring portrait artist. I mostly just do head and shoulders portraits of people, sometimes pets. Like I drew our family cat the other day, but I don't have a lot of impressive variety to what I do. I probably need to branch out on my subject matter too, but I enjoy making these head and shoulders portraits, so I haven't gotten there yet to branching out. Again, I'm not too fancy on the clothing aspect of it. I probably should work on that. I should probably try to get better there. Try to do some, I think it'd probably be good for me to try to do some, maybe some portraits on bigger paper that are like torso. Instead of just a head and shoulders, maybe do, I don't know, like this on bigger paper. I don't know. It'd probably be good for me to practice and learn in that way. I haven't gotten there yet, but you know, maybe someday that can be on my list of things to try, things to learn. That's one of the things that I think is great about this hobby, is there is a ton to learn. Even if you don't, you know, make art your all-consuming, all-the-time thing, that's okay. You can do it as a hobby and practice, and there's something you can work on getting better at. Let's see. Let's do a little red. This is obviously supposed to be a scarf, or at least I hope that's obvious, but I don't know. I think that looks like a scarf. I hope it does. When it comes to clothes, getting back to my list of weaknesses or list of things to improve on, I think my blending technique works pretty decently for skin, but it is not as good for clothes. Clothes are obviously, fabric is a different feel, a different texture, and I think using a one-size-fits-all is maybe not the best approach for clothes. And I especially have not really figured out how to do shadows in clothes. That's pretty tricky. I always tend to want to, as you've seen in this video, I like to layer the colors on and then use a warm gray to add some shadows, but for some reason that does not work as well on clothes. My theory is that clothes, the kind of shadows and dark portions in clothing and fabric, see, this is what happens when you press as hard as I do. Sometimes you lose your pencil tip. I'm actually surprised that that's the only time this happened so far in this drawing. So I think the technique for clothes probably lies somewhere in, instead of just using this warm gray to try to get the color you want, it probably lies in using variations of color. Like I have a bluish scarf and I want to darken part of it. I can't help but wonder if instead you're supposed to just use a darker blue instead of trying to force that warm gray into the situation. That might not be that might be part of my problem. Again, a function of trying to adapt a one-size-fits-all solution to to everything about drawing, which works in some ways it does not. You know, one thing I did not mention, in case anyone is wondering who the subject is. So my usual subjects, like sources for drawing material, this is just a stock photo image. I think I saw it on an article on The Onion. I wish I could remember. I should have thought to remember what the funny caption was that came with this, but it's just a random stock photo image. I'm okay using this because I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm not going to sell it or anything like that. It's just practice. I guess you would call it a portrait study. So it's just a random stock photo image. But if this were a portrait that I was going to do something with, like I was going to, I don't know, like I published a book a couple of years ago, and you know, if I was going to include a drawing in a book, that's a pretty clear commercial use, and you couldn't use a stock photo image unless you paid for it. So in this case, unless I unless I licensed the use of this image, it's certainly not one I would use for anything other than this just basic practice portrait study. So thank you, random stock photo image. I will try to find that Onion article again. I probably liked it on Twitter or something, so maybe I can find it that way. But that way I can at least try to hunt down and credit the original article, or the wherever the image came from or something. That's always a nice thing to do, is say, hey, this is based on such and such. Some other areas where you can get portrait ideas. So Unsplash is a website that has royalty-free images that you can use. So that has some pretty good photography that you could use for practice, like just sort of, you know, to base some drawings on. Let's see. You know, like I said, they're just some random articles you read. If you think it would be an interesting sketch to practice with, you can save it on your phone or something. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Photos you take, that's a great one too. Just photos of your family. You know, that's always good. Like drawing your spouse or your kids, or you know, just drawing stuff that you like, basically. It's always good practice. I think I've drawn my family. I've lost count at this point. There was one time where I'm a big fan of data and spreadsheets and stuff, and I did a count of all of the portrait subjects that I've ever done, and kind of categorized them and tried to get an idea. And certainly family was the grand champion of that contest. You know, that's always been something that interests me, is drawing them. And in fact, when I first got back into drawing, I think it was 2017, I had not drawn anything for most of my adult life. I think I'd gone at least 10 years, maybe 15, without drawing anything. I guess just, I don't really know why. I drew a lot when I was much younger, and just lost track of the hobby. But I got back into it. My first drawing was my kids. It was not great, but you know, I did it again. There's that broken tip. But it was a good way to get back into it. The kids were very young still, and you know, just drawing babies is its own challenge, but you know, it was a fun way to hop back into the swing of things. All right, so random stock photo lady, we are almost done here. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, so Well, actually, one thing I should mention, I don't know where we're at in this video. I think we're probably at about over an hour, maybe an hour 15, hour 30. That's about the normal time frame for doing a portrait like this, in my experience. Usually I can knock them out in about that time frame. I think if you focused more on getting the layers like probably you're supposed to, getting multiple layers and getting them blended properly, taking your time, probably a drawing like this. Again, I don't really do it that way, so I'm probably not the best person to speak to that, but that's probably adds another hour at least, maybe more to the drawing. So anyways, yeah, probably about an hour and a half, I guess. So the last thing I wanted to show was this X-Acto knife thing, trying to add some flyaway hairs and some sort of, I mean, hair is tricky because there should be some individual hairs that kind of pop up because of light reflecting. But this is very difficult because you don't want to rip your paper. Obviously that would be a bad outcome, spending an hour and a half on a drawing only to gouge a big hole in it with an X-Acto knife. That would not be fun. And I don't even know if the camera is picking up any of these little hairs that are kind of coming up here. But I'm just trying to lightly pull up some of, I'm not scratching hard, I'm just lightly dragging the X-Acto knife in the direction roughly that I think, not roughly, not rough as in hard, but generally in the direction that I think the hair is flowing, but not completely, because I do want, you know, hair is not all oh, that's a good one. That one turned out really good. Hair's not all uniform, right? It kind of flows in different directions. That's pulling up really nicely. So I don't know if you can see that. Some hair, some like defined hair lines are coming up there. I really like that. That's actually right there. That's, I'm a rookie at this X-Acto knife thing, and that turned out really well actually right there. So one of the things that I've heard from people who are better at this is that the more wax you have on the paper, the more pencil you've laid down, especially if you've done it in multiple layers, the better this works, because you pull out. So like, let's say hypothetically let's say we used these 5 colors to layer in. We didn't, but let's say we did, and we layered in a bunch of different colors here in a very dynamic looking color blend. By dragging this across, we would pull out some of these colors too, so it would look really nice. I'm not getting that effect here because I think I only have like 2 or 3 different colors, but yeah, dragging this X-Acto knife across would pop some of that color out in a really cool way. But in this case, this is actually, because I had such a thick layer here, I mentioned earlier in the video I lost the paper tooth here. There was too much wax. I was able to get some of it to pop right off on the X-Acto knife. Be careful you don't cut yourself. I just almost poked myself good there, but it really did pull some of that off and made it look like actual hair kind of right there, which is nice. I wasn't expecting that to work as well as it did. You know, again, this is not, obviously I don't think this is you know, Rembrandt level depiction or anything like that. But I really like that. That is something to build off of for me, because I rarely get that level of and I'm kind of going in here trying to add a little more to this hair, because I feel like it's kind of weak. There's not good contrast here. Oops, that was weird. There we go. Okay, so now we're just about to the end of this drawing. I'm not gonna spend too much more time on it, but I do want to go back in here, as I mentioned, just kind of try to make sure I captured everything that I wanted to, that I did not lose too much. Some things are not really recoverable in this drawing, like right here. I would like to be able to see a little more detail, but I'm not sure how to pull that detail out without not making it dark. So like I can get the detail if I hadn't have made it so dark, but I wanted it to be dark, so kind of a tricky situation. So I think that's it for this one. I hope the narration, the verbal narration, was useful. It's a little different than some of the other videos that I've done, where I did a subtitle on the bottom to try to talk out the drawing process. But my philosophy in sharing some of this stuff is, you know, if it helps another amateur, another person who's trying to learn, it's all a learning experience to me, so we're kind of all learning together in a way. But thank you for watching the video. If you have any questions, just sound off in the comment section. So